We're going to begin our A&P 2 class by going through Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is a very important chapter in which we are going to learn a lot of the terminology that you're going to use throughout A&P 1 and A&P 2. This is the type of material that is going to require you to simply practice with the terms so that you can get comfortable with them and begin using them anytime you're talking about any type of A&P material. In this section, A&P 1, we'll be covering just the first four systems shown on this slide. We will go through the integumentary system, which includes your skin, your hair, and your fingernails and toenails. Then we'll move into the skeletal system. Skeletal system includes your bones and your joints. Third, we'll do the muscular system, which we will focus mainly on the skeletal muscles in this class. However, smooth muscle would fit into this category. The last system we'll cover in our A&P 1 course is the nervous system. The nervous system includes the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves. You notice that all these other systems on the list, they will be covered in A&P 2. This should give you some idea that since we're only covering four systems, some of these systems are going to be pretty complex, and it's going to take a little bit of time for us to go through them. The main one that is going to be most complex for you is the nervous system. But we're going to take it slow, and we're going to all learn everything we need to know about the nervous system. The first term that's important for you to learn out of Chapter 1 is the term homeostasis. Homeostasis is the state that our body tries to maintain. Regardless of what happens outside of our body, there are certain things that our body likes to keep set at some specific point. We have lots of mechanisms that allow us to keep these items at the point our body likes them to be. To give you an example that you've all experienced with homeostasis, I can give you the example using body temperature. We all know that body temperature is 98.6 Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. This temperature has to be maintained for our body to accomplish all of its normal functions. If we get cold, that means our body temperature has started to lower. Our body's response to being cold is to shiver. Shivering makes our skeletal muscles contract. That contraction releases heat. Therefore, we raise our body temperature. That's your body's way of trying to get back to its homeostatic temperature. We can go in the other direction. If you are hot, your body has to do something to get it back down to its normal temperature, so you begin to sweat. The water on the outside of the body leads to a cooling effect, bringing our temperature down. So we're going to kind of see this effect as we go through A&P 1 as well as A&P 2, with our body having some specific state it needs to maintain and doing anything it can to alter that body to get it back to its normal state. Anytime we discuss the human body in an A&P course, we place the body into anatomical position. This is a standard position we can place the body so that no matter who is describing some part of the body, it is always in the same orientation to the other body parts. Anatomical position requires the person to stand erect with their feet slightly apart, typically shoulder width, arms at their side, head facing forward, and palms facing forward. If I'm in anatomical position, my head is always above my feet. If I were to lie down, my head may not be above my feet anymore, depending on the angle at which I'm laying. But if I'm in anatomical position, the head is always going to be above the feet. And that is just the only reason we use this anatomical position. When I'm standing in anatomical position, I can divide the body into two different regions. I have an axial region. The axial region includes my head, my neck, my chest, and my abdomen, which makes up my trunk. This is the central axis of the body. The appendicular region of my body is made of my limbs and anything that connects my limbs to the axial region of my body. So this would be my legs and my hips, my arms, and my shoulders. Now that we all understand we keep the body in a specific orientation, anatomical position, you can understand that we can then use specific terms called directional terms to give us a relationship between different parts of the body. I said on the previous slide, my head is above my feet. Using the word above is not really using true anatomical terminology. Okay? The terms we use in the place of above and below are superior and inferior. The word superior takes the place of above or closer to your head. The word inferior takes the place of the word below or closer to the lower part of the body, away from your head. To give you an example, I would say that my head is above my knee, therefore my head is superior to my knee. My ankle is below, so it is inferior to my shoulder. Okay? You can use those two words yourselves to kind of think about how you would use them to describe other parts of the body. The next two directional terms on the slide are ventral and dorsal, which are synonymous to anterior and posterior. These words are used to describe anything that is closer to the front or belly region of the body, that's your ventral and anterior, or closer to the back of the body, that would be dorsal and posterior. To give you an example, my belly button is more ventral or anterior compared to my backbone. It is more dorsal or posterior. Moving on, our next two terms are medial and lateral. These two words are used to describe any parts of the body that are in relation to the midline of the body. Anything that is closer to a midline, which would be the imaginary line you drew if you started in the middle of your forehead, came down the center of your nose, in the middle of your lips, all the way down, center of the chest, through the belly button, and cut the body into left and right halves. That's your midline. Anything that is closer to that midline is considered medial. Anything that is further away from the midline to the edges of the body would be lateral. To give you an example, my nose is more medial. My ear is more lateral when you're comparing those two to each other. The next two terms are the two that people typically get the most confused about, and the key to understanding these two is remembering that you only use proximal and distal when you're referring to regions of the same body part. Typically, we use these terms when we're talking about the arms and legs, the appendages. Something is considered more proximal if it is close to the origin or beginning of the body part. It is considered more distal if it is further away from the beginning or origin of the body part. Using an example of my arms, I would say that my wrist is more distal compared to my elbow. My elbow is more proximal compared to my wrist. On my legs, I could use the example, my ankle is more distal than my knee. My knee is more proximal than my ankle. You can't say your knee is superior to your ankle because you're comparing two regions of the leg, the same body part. Our last two terms, superficial and deep, tell us, they are used when we're talking about things that are further to the outer surface of the body or the inner surface of the body. Your skin is always going to be your most superficial organ. The muscles are always considered deep to the skin. They are further on the inside of your body. I highly recommend that you do your homework assignments to practice with these terms. It simply takes a lot of practice to truly be able to use them correctly. The next two figures show the proper terminology for the regions of the superficial portions of the body, the outer parts of the body. You are simply going to have to sit down and learn the proper terminology for this. This is also something that you will have to practice, do your online assignments, and just work with it to really be able to use these terms. Going through some of them for you, the entire head region, that is considered cephalic. The entire region that's colored in orange, that is thoracic. The entire region colored in purple is abdominal pelvic. Showing you some of the smaller regions on the body. The forehead is frontal, the eyes are orbital, the nose is nasal, the mouth is oral, the chin is mental, which I kind of think is one of the silliest ones of all the naming. The neck is cervical. Now looking at the subregions of the thoracic region. The armpits are axillary. The area where the breasts are located, they are mammary regions. The center of the chest is the sternal region. Now looking at the upper limb, we have the shoulder, which is acromial. The upper arm is brachial. The front of the elbow is antecubital. And the lower arm, the forearm, is antebrachial. The wrist is carpal, and the fingers are digital. Now moving to the leg. The hips are coxal. The upper leg is femoral. The front of the knee is patellar. The front of the lower leg, or what you would call your shin, is crural. The outer edge of the leg, lower leg, is fibular. The ankle is tarsal. The foot is metatarsal. And then again, your digits are digital. Flipping now to the back of the body. On the head, there's a few new regions you can see. The ear is otic, and the back of the head is occipital. Back of the neck is still considered cervical. The blue region here, that is the dorsal region. The sides of the dorsal region, they are the scapular region. The center of the dorsal region is vertebral, and the lower back is the lumbar. The butt cheeks are known as the gluteal region, and the area between the butt cheeks, that is going to be the sacral region. The back of the arm is the same as the front of the arm, except the back of the elbow is the olecranal region. Remember, the front of the elbow was the antecubital region. The back of the legs is the same as the front, except the back of the knee is the popliteal region. The front of the knee was the patellar region. The back of the lower leg, where your calves are located, is the sural region. The front was the crural region. In A&P, there are often times when we are required to cut the body into two pieces. When we make cuts into the body, we cut along common planes. The terminology is written on these two slides, but I'm going to flip to the picture to point these out. Looking at this drawing here, if we cut the body along this plane, using this piece of glass, we would cut the body into left and right halves. Any cut or any plane that divides the body into left and right halves is considered a sagittal plane. If it cuts the body into a mirror image left and right half, then it is considered mid-sagittal. If we cut the body along this plane, not straight, with this sheet of glass, we've cut the body into superior and inferior portions, top and bottom. This is the transverse plane. If we cut the body along this plane, we have cut the body into anterior and posterior, or ventral and dorsal regions, front and back. This is the frontal, sometimes known as the coronal plane. In lab, as we go through the semester and we get to dissections, you will be given instructions that tell you to cut the organ along the mid-sagittal plane or the transverse plane. So you have to become familiar with what these words mean. Again, I'm going to flip to the picture. You guys have the words here if you would like to use them to study. What we've gone over so far are the proper terminology, proper names for the outside of the body. All of you already know there's stuff going on the inside of your body. There's lots of things in there. The name we use for a region that contains some sort of organ is a cavity. There's the dorsal body cavity. Since it's dorsal, that one's going to be on the back side of the body. And there's the ventral body cavity. The dorsal body cavity consists of the cranial cavity here, which all of you I'm sure can tell me houses the brain, and the ventral cavity running down here. This contains the spinal cord. Very heavily protected cavities. The ventral body cavity contains the thoracic cavity, which is the entire chest region, and the abdominopelvic cavity, which is the entire belly region. Within the thoracic cavity, we have the mediastinum, which is at the top, the pericardial, which is below or inferior to the mediastinum, and then we have two pleural cavities on the edges. The pleural cavities contain the lungs. The pericardial cavity contains the heart. If we move down to the abdominal cavity, this is going to be the location of most of your internal organs, such as your stomach, your intestines, your gallbladder, your spleen, all the organs you're going to learn about their function in A&P 1 and 2. The lower portion, the pelvic cavity, simply contains the bladder, the reproductive organs, and a portion of the digestive system known as the rectum. Since there are so many things within the abdominal cavity, we separate the abdominal cavity and the abdominal and pelvic cavities into what we call the abdominopelvic quadrants, shown here. You need to become familiar with the names of the different quadrants. That's what I'm highlighting now for you. Couple tips to help you. You start in the center near the belly button. That's your umbilical region. Above the umbilical region is the epigastric. Below the umbilical is the hypogastric. The sides have the same names. This is the model's left arm, so each of these have the name left. This is the model's right arm, so each of these have the word right. The top quadrant is hypochondriac, middle quadrant is lumbar, and lower quadrant is iliac, or sometimes called inguinal. Since we're just starting in A&P 1, I do not expect you to all know exactly where all of the organs are located. So you don't need to expect me to ask you questions on a test that are something like, which quadrant is the gallbladder located? I don't expect you to know specifically those regions yet. But if given a picture that looks something like this, you need to be able to tell me what those are. The last little bit of information out of Chapter 1 is the term serous membrane. I need you to understand that throughout your abdominal pelvic cavity, you have many different really thin double-layered membranes. You have parietal serosa, parietal membranes, that line the internal body walls, meaning they attach to the walls of your stomach and your back. You also have visceral serosa that line your internal organs. The visceral serosa is going to combine or merge into your parietal serosa, helping to hold all of your internal organs into proper orientation. This allows you to jump up and down and not worry about your organs hitting the top or hitting the bottom of your body. Everything is held into a perfect orientation. I hope this lecture helped you become comfortable with some of the terms out of Chapter 1. Again, this is terminology you are going to have to practice with. Go ahead, get on Mastering A&P, Do your Chapter 1 homeworks. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you need more practice work with any of these terms.